There are some typography issues that branding designers need to know about. Let's talk about it. Signatures. For our purpose, we've defined a signature as the company name written in a particular font, with minimal or no design adjustments. As stated before, this is the least value-added design and has been used historically mostly for identities of consumer products. Signatures are not as suitable for other kinds of identities. Having said that, it is still the normal practice to have a signature accompany a logo or a monogram. In that case, the signature follows our original definition, the company's functional name printed in a particular font. So even if a signature alone will not suffice, it is part of an identity except for word marks. And even most of those start out as signatures before the integration of the unique design elements. Trendy versus timeless. Graphic designers usually love typography, and when a new font design comes along, it is a big temptation to use something that looks contemporary. But trends, by their very nature, are temporary. So choosing a trendy type font for an identity is like putting a best before date on your brand design. It will inevitably look out of date sooner than choosing a font that has a timeless clarity about it. In this slide, most, but not all, of these companies have learned that lesson and changed their identities to a timeless font. They may not be exciting, but they are more legible. Those companies that merely changed their old trendy font for a new trendy font will find their identities will look stale, old, and tired or passé before long, and have to change them again. Legibility above all. What were these designers thinking? Did they imagine that people wanted to play a guessing game? The last two samples on the right are not totally illegible, but neither has their treatment promoted instant readability, which should be the goal in all branding design. Some designers think it's leading edge to be ultra-modern or even cryptic in their signature designs, but it is just bleeding edge, not leading edge. Rather like gluing thumbtacks point up on the saddle, thinking they will keep a rider from falling off. For the public, the effort to decipher these signatures becomes painful and may not be worth the bother. The absolute first requirement of a signature font is clarity. One might conceive of a seesaw with clarity on one end and personality on the other end. If personality goes up, clarity most often goes down. Scripts, for instance, are among the most difficult font groups to read instantly. There is a reason that we see so few fancy fonts used in identity design. Typically, the fancier the font, the lower the readability. Remember, the more personality a font has, the more likely it is to become dated and look tired. Many companies that used more idiosyncratic fonts have had to redesign their identities to look contemporary. Unfortunately, looking contemporary is what led them to that problem in the first place. What is needed instead is a look that is timeless. Each of these signatures has been redesigned to use type that will look less dated in a few years. Not all of them have succeeded. A wise designer will always ask, will this font stand the test of time? That is what a good signature should do. The goal should be timeless, not trendy. Another reason to opt for type with less personality is that you don't want the signature vying with the logo or monogram for attention. The logo should attract and engage the eye, while the signature identifies whose logo it is. If the signature has too much personality, there will be a tug of war for the viewer's attention. Signature weight. Since clarity is essential if an identity is to do its most basic job, there are real drawbacks to a signature with no mass. See Deadly Sin of Logo Design number 2, lack of mass. When signatures with no mass are used in a small space, the signature's legibility will be compromised. Even worse, when, not if, an identity is used in reverse, the signature's letter forms will fill in, no matter what kind of printing is used. While signage and cut vinyl will not fill in when reversed, it is usually viewed at a distance, which will have the same visual effect. Fonts with both thick and very thin strokes also suffer especially when printed in reverse. The issue does not go away on the web. Because there are only nominally 72 pixels per inch on the web, very fine strokes don't show up as solid black or white when reversed. This can mean that none of the pixels of a uniform stroke typeface such as Dax Light, or the thin parts of a thick and thin stroke typeface such as Bodoni, will show up as black or white respectively. Kerning. Even though a signature with a logo or monogram is just type set in a particular font, you can't use it without perfect kerning. Kerning means adjusting the spaces between letters so that they appear uniform. While this is not done for body text, it becomes extremely important in titles and in identity signatures. These words will be seen at different sizes and over a long period of time, and clumsy spacing can become quite noticeable, even irksome, if proper kerning is not done. One simple way to discover where kerning is most needed is to look at words upside down. Even better, look at them upside down and backwards, perhaps through a piece of paper. Instead of noticing the letters, you then would notice any uneven spaces between them. To achieve good kerning, it is often acceptable to let two letters touch or even overlap. Indeed, many signatures have tight letter spacing to begin with, so that all or most of the letters touch anyway. If you are inexperienced at kerning, you can try printing your proposed signature in larger and very small sizes. Notice whether there are any kerning issues. Much will depend on the particular letter combinations. Capital W's and T's, for instance, may have other letters nesting under their overhanging parts. Capital L's naturally make a large void on the right, and they are prime candidates for joined ligatures with the next letter. See visual technique number 6, ligatures, swashes, and flourishes. Often the space after an apostrophe needs to be kerned. The possible combinations and needs for kerning are as varied as the words in our language. Examples of poor kerning are all about us. Look at those gaps. But sometimes over-kerning can be a problem too, as seen in the two disastrous examples at the lower right. The better solution to a capital L followed by an I can be easily solved by using lowercase letters instead of caps. Signatures and extra letter spacing. It has become trendy to add extra letter spacing to signatures, called tracking in most graphic software. Generally speaking, this is a counterproductive design decision for two reasons. One, extra letter spacing makes a word read less naturally, visually speaking. The words don't hold together as well. And two, extra letter spacing makes the signature type shorter vertically in the same horizontal space than it would have been with normal or even tight tracking. Graphic design always has space limitations, page size, ad widths, column widths, and so on. To ignore this fact of our profession is absurd. It is equally unrealistic to think that size doesn't matter, at least as far as legibility is concerned. In the samples here, each word is set in the same overall width and the same amount of extra letter spacing. If the signature type is vertically shorter than it needs to be, it will surely become illegible sooner than the signature with normal tracking. The length of a signature has a direct bearing on the danger of extra letter spacing. As you can see, more tracking merely weakens a medium-sized signature, but can be disastrous for long signatures. In the end, only short signatures survive this treatment. There are many successful ones in use now. But that doesn't mean that it improves legibility. Here we have a word set with natural letter spacing, then with typical extra letter spacing, which widens out the horizontal space it requires. Third, we have reduced the word with the extra letter spacing to fit in the same horizontal width as the original word. Type with extra tracking or extra letter spacing will be much smaller vertically in the same horizontal space, and therefore be harder to read than when using natural letter spacing. Extra tracking is more harmful to longer signatures than to shorter ones. Extended, regular, or condensed type. A related but separate issue is type aspect width. Any font will have an overall aspect. Either it is inherently condensed, regular, or extended. Very long signatures will work better if set in more condensed fonts. If set in regular width fonts, they will be vertically shorter for their width. If set in extended fonts, they will tend to be very short vertically for their width. As we have already established, when a signature is wider than it needs to be horizontally, it will be shorter vertically and accordingly harder to read. Therefore, long signatures benefit most from condensed fonts and benefit least from extended fonts. Here is the same word set in the same weight but in different widths. The extended version is much shorter vertically for the width than the regular or condensed versions. Therefore, condensed fonts should be considered for long signatures, while extended fonts should be avoided. On the other hand, shorter signatures have the flexibility to use fonts of any aspect. Medium-length signatures are less flexible, but successful signatures are possible with all three width aspects of fonts. All caps versus upper and lower case. Many studies have been done on the relative legibility of all capital letters versus upper and lower case. These studies measured instant recognition of words on highway billboards, where a viewer might be able to spare a mere second or less to look while driving. The studies showed that words in upper and lower case were easier to read than those in all caps. Lowercase words vary more in whole contour. This makes them easier to read. Does this have implications for identity design? Given that instant recognition is a fundamental goal of any identity design, it should. Consider also that some difficult kerning issues, L followed by A, W followed by Y, etc., are lessened or not an issue at all with upper and lower case. Does this mean that all caps are unsuitable for signature design? No. Many fine and useful signatures are in all caps. But does it mean that if a given word poses difficulties, such as not being a common word, a designer should always consider upper and lower case? What about using all lowercase? In our Western culture, we capitalize first letters of proper names, and a signature is definitely the proper name of a company. So the first inclination would be to use uppercase for the first letter. Too often, new designers choose all lowercase just to be different. As we have discussed earlier, this is an immature reason if it doesn't make the design stronger. And generally speaking, all lowercase does not make the word stronger, as we see in these examples. Some companies have moved in the right direction and others not. Besides that, using all lowercase letters can make the name seem less worthy of respect. That is not to say that all lowercase signatures should never be done, but they should be done for aesthetic reasons, not in an attempt to be trendy or avant-garde. As you have seen, there are many ways we can either strengthen our identities or weaken them by the typographic decisions we make. Even for a signature, just type off the keyboard. For more information, go to logodesigntheory.com. If you found this useful, please like this video, subscribe, and share this with anyone who needs to know more about logo design.